Okay, hello, welcome to another Jenkins X office hours. Big announcement was last week that we managed to get a GA of Jenkins X3 out and is now available. So that was the big exciting news. There's no demos today. There's a couple of discussion points we can have lined up, but hopefully we'll have a bit of a discussion about any experience of the JX3 or anything with Jenkins X, in fact. And yeah, any kind of updates. So I don't know if we want to kick things off. Does anybody have anything particular they wanted to start with? And if not, we can talk about some a bit more in depth of the release. But does anybody have anything?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm two computers. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I was here. I mean, with the computer with the camera, so you might have recognized me over there around a month ago, and we were just installing Jenkins X 2 because 3 was not generally available, and we had a lot of issues with that. It was a bit tedious to install, and we upgraded to Jenkins 3 and everything works nicely, and we get good. We definitely increased the velocity of our teams with the preview environment and so on. So first of all, thank you. It was very beneficial for us. Second thing is just since we're still adopting, we try to integrate all kinds of things that might be, because last time we talked, the documentations were not up to date necessarily with everything. So I wanted to pop by and ask, I think the Slack is a bit outdated, Slack documentation, because it still talks about the Slack bots, custom resource. And if you look at the source code, you see it's actually been removed.
Right.
So
yeah, the website is up to date, but the README in the plugin is still stale.
Okay, so I'll go back to the website. Cool.
Yeah, I should fix that. Sorry. Yeah.
No worries.
I noticed that the other day.
And the environments. How do I plug in a different cluster?
So there is actually, I think there is. Have you seen that there is a website doc for that? I think a couple of people have followed it.
Just finding it.
The website has gone through slight, since with the release of GA, there has been a slight switch. You might see a bit of a change in some of the movement of some of the websites. So yeah, James has just popped that link in. So we want to be, by default, we want to be now focusing, people should end up on the V3 docs. So hopefully that'll make things a little bit clearer to some of the options as you look through them.
Yeah, because I end up definitely somewhere else. Okay, cool. Thank you. That was like the pressing. These were the pressing things. And that's it. I'm here to listen and maybe learn something else. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. The search index as well should be on all the V3 stuff now.
All right.
So it used to be able to search for things like multi-cluster. You'd find all kinds of crazy docs from the last 3 years, whereas now, hopefully, you only see the good docs and not the library roles.
I just go back to the footer of the page and look when was it updated usually. And if I see it's 2020, I'm kind of, I know it's not there. Cool.
Good call. Yeah, I should do the same.
I was really pleased at some of that feedback though. It was a bit subtle in there at the start, but the experiences you had with V2 when running into issues and having the problem with the installation and things working with V3, it's really nice to hear, I guess, because there's
definitely
a lot of
and I believe after understanding, we actually call it the Kraken internally because there are a lot of moving things, right? And once I think we'll get a hold of the Kraken and we can tame it, I will be extremely happy to be a part of the project and contribute back, because it definitely helps us, and I hope way more people around the industry.
That absolutely, and it obviously be great to have anybody more involved. Everything's constantly moving. Everything's constantly being upgraded, new versions, new technologies, new ways of doing things. So it's this constant evolution of change, which is really kind of it's hard, and in just the industry we are in, just to keep up with everything. I think one of the things we learned from Jenkins X previous versions we've had was sometimes we try to wrap things or hide things a little bit too much, and maybe our documentation wasn't good enough. We should be just directing to the thing that is used, like Helm file, for example, or various secrets providers and various other things. So I think that was some of the lessons we've learned. But it's a constant evolution of change. There's new things that we're already looking at, and new integrations and things. But there's lots of areas that if you want to dive in and help out, that would be lots of opportunity to.
I think the fact we use Jenkins X uses Tekton Vanilla helped us tremendously, because you don't need to document the Jenkins X that wraps the Tekton, but we just straight on go to Tekton. So you just need to see the version of Tekton, and that's it. You know what you're getting.
And just as that continues to grow as well, we have automated tests that verify the Jenkins X bits work as it continues. But Tekton should be allowed to continue to evolve as it is going to, adding new capabilities, and we just consume those and make them more easier for people to be able to consume. And the tooling, whether people want to use the CLI or the UI or various other things. So yeah, it's definitely a lesson we've learned, I think. Well, that's really good to hear.
Cool.
Someone hit an issue with sidecars in.
That's us.
Oh,
remember?
yeah.
That's us.
Yeah. Okay, that's you.
So we like, okay, sidecars. We just tried, because we maybe Juan, my colleague, found the V3 documentation and tried to implement the V2, and we had this and then we just copy pasted it in the V3 inside the Lighthouse, and it just worked. Oh, okay, that explains a lot. Yeah,
it used to be one of those things that someone. No, that's good, but it used to be one of those things that someone would try a new part of Tekton that we never really used much before, or whatever, and then we'd go, oh no, it's going to take so long to get into Jenkins X pipelines that wrap Tekton, and and then Tekton, for a while, Tekton was changing quite a lot, and it was always this, oh no, we're on an ancient version of Tekton and stuff. What's really nice is now we can basically just track the latest Tekton release, because it is just Tekton. We're not doing any wrapping. It's just Tekton. Occasionally we get the odd little gremlin, like we weren't copying the sidecars that you found, which was a really simple fix. It was really easy to write a test. It was like really, it was like 20 minutes work and it was done. But that makes things much easier, that we can keep on the latest Helm and Helm file and Tekton, and anything that comes along, we can be there, because everything is changing all the time. It's a challenge. But
open source.
That's turned out to be much easier. It is. It is. But yeah, it's been working so well on V3. It's been good. One thing that James and myself have been trying just in the last day or so is a kind of slight tangent. There's various other tools out there in the GitHub space. So there's Argo CD and there's Flux CD. And we've just been experimenting, trying to find out, if somebody really likes Argo or really likes Flux and they really want to use that, what would it look like if we use Argo CD or Flux CD as the last mile kubectl apply piece? James has tried Argo. I tried Flux. They both seem pretty good. They do what they say on the tin. We're not quite there yet, but we've pretty much got. We're close to figuring out a canonical integration that, if you want to use, instead of the Git operator, and you wanted to use Argo CD or you want to use Flux, we should be able to have fairly standard instructions of how to swap out that piece if you wish, particularly if your production cluster, for example, maybe you're already using Argo CD in production, and you just want to keep the Argo CD in production and use Jenkins X in dev and maybe staging and maybe use preview environments, but maybe use or whatever, Argo or Flux as the last mile. It turns out they're similar, slightly different, but they're similar. But even just doing that has been useful to see what's good and bad in each GitHub operator. I'm biased. I love the Git operator because it's so simple. The Git operator just runs a job that's defined in your Git repository whenever Git changes, which could just literally run kubectl apply if that's what you want to do. Or it could run Helm install, or it could use Helm file template, or it could run customize. Switching to use Argo and Flux, they're slightly more complicated, and so it takes a while to get your head around them. But they both seem pretty decent. So I'm hoping soon we should be able to document that if you do want to switch out Git operator in a remote cluster and use Argo or Flux, they seem very similar and they seem to do similar things. It's interesting though that there's lots of ways, even with just Argo and Flux, there's lots of ways you can do it. So you can put all of your YAML in the Git repository and basically do kubectl apply. Or you can write lots of CRDs for the Helm templating in Flux, or you could have CRDs point to all of your different application repositories with a tag. So if you have an environment repository, you could put like 10 CRDs that point at your application repositories with their tags. So even taking Airtable, Flux, or Argo, there's about 4 different ways you could do GitOps. I'm hoping at some point as an industry, we can maybe come to some conclusions on what's probably the best way, rather than having all these different ways, because it just adds confusion and makes things more complicated. But at least it's interesting that things do feel like they're aligning. Git certainly can look very similar between Git operator, Argo, Flux, and Google's config sync is very similar. It basically does kubectl apply of whatever's in the config root directory. But that's all interesting. Hopefully we'll have some blogs out in the next couple of weeks on what it looks like if the last mile is using Argo CD or Flux CD instead of the Git operator. Thankfully, everything else looks pretty much the same. The tecton's the same, the images are the same, the charts are the same. It's just how the last mile kind of works.
And one of the things we obviously want to do, the approach to Jenkins X3 was obviously a lot more modular, a lot easier to extend and swap out different parts that you want. So there is, and we love open source, so we want to be able to make sure that we're good open source citizens, and we can work well, can integrate well with other open source projects. If you're using Argo CD or Flux, then you still should be able to benefit from all the other capabilities that Jenkins X brings with that, whether that's preview environments or whether that's developer UX or tailing logs with different tooling, tracing, Grafana, all these other things that the integration with Tecton and everything. Having what does the actual apply, we shouldn't be that, we don't want to be that opinionated about it. So it's a really good approach to comparing the Git operator that we've got in Jenkins X, Argo CD and Flux, and saying, look, here you go, it doesn't matter, you can use all of them, let's have a good story. One of the interesting things I found about Argo, actually, which again, probably only like a day into this, it's really, really nice. Love the docs, and it's a good experience, nice and slick. But it's different, so slightly certain things, a different approach to solving some of the things that we've had. It's almost, I can see some of the things where they haven't done, where we probably have done as well. Like for example, we use GitOps for the actual main installation of Jenkins X. So if you do an upgrade, you do an actual upgrade on the Git repository. Right now, the Argo is a kubectl apply of the initial setup, and then it only offers GitOps on the things that it's of the repos that you want to go have in, which is interesting. And that could actually work quite well. There might be some nice interop with Jenkins X potentially there, and certain other things. So I think it's opening up the doors and seeing about where we can help each other, where there's opportunities to collaborate, and basically just help people build better software. I think that's really what the aim is here.
Yeah, one of the things I've always wanted, if you kind of squint from 30,000 feet, there isn't really much of a difference between Flux CD, Argo CD, and Git operator and Google config sync. They're all effectively doing kubectl apply when Git changes. If you kind of look from 30,000 feet, there's not a massive difference. The bit that's always kind of the thing that troubles me, I guess, is they all do things in lots of different ways. You can use them in different ways each. And then developers have got all this choice about, like, how do I lay things out? What should I do? I'm hoping we can kind of nudge people towards whichever one of these tools you're using. Why don't we use this canonical, directory layout? Let's use a canonical, a bit like when Maven came along. Like, if anybody's old enough to remember Ant was great, but everybody did everything differently. And you looked at an Ant project, you had no idea what it was. And it took you hours of reading config files to find, that's what this folder's for. It'd be kind of nice if we could come up with, like, this is the best practice recommendation that whatever the last mile tool is, please use these directory layouts and please use this kind of convention, because then it's going to be easy for people just to look at Git repo and go, I get what it is. Whereas I've been looking at examples of Argo and Git operator and FluxCD, and a lot of them are conceptually identical, but it takes a long time to understand how they're doing it, what they're doing, and why they're doing it. So I'm hoping throughout the industry and with the CNCF and with CDF, we could maybe come up with some efforts of standardization, because there's only so many ways we should be doing this. And for example, we should have standard GitHub actions and Tecton pipelines to do promotions. It shouldn't matter what the last mile tool is, whether it's Argo or Flux or Git operator or Google Config Sync. The effect should be similar. One of the things I really like that we made a choice in Jenkins X v3 to use a single, there was, to be fair, it was influenced slightly by Google Config Sync. Google Config Sync says, we just do kubectl apply. You just need to give us a tree of YAML files, and that's all we're going to do, which is really nice to have that simplicity of, you just need a tree of YAML files, and it goes here in your directory tree, and we're good to go. And then we've got a nice, simple declarative interface. So we made sure that Jenkins X v3 would comply with Google Config Sync if you want to use that as your last mile, because that's an optional thing in GKE, which you might want to use. Since we tried that out, we've been using that as the default in Jenkins X. It turns out having that simple declarative convention of a tree of YAML files that are versioned in Git has been so useful diagnosing issues. Like if anything changes in any production cluster or development cluster and something goes weird, you just find the resource that's weird and you look in the Git history of that one file and you can see exactly how it's changed over time, which really usually helps figuring out what's gone wrong. Whereas a lot of the other things you could do with GitOps is you could have loads of customized files everywhere. You could have loads of templating stuff everywhere. And then you can't look in Git anymore. You have to kind of do mental arithmetic in your head that says, if I ran what's in Git now, what would be the output? And what would have been the output 3 weeks ago? And so, anyways, yeah, I've gone off on a tangent. But I do hope we could maybe get some consensus of what should the conventional Git repository look like in your production cluster, in your staging cluster, because a lot of these trade-offs seem quite arbitrary. Should we store the customized files in Git, or should we store the output of customized, like the YAML files? It turns out storing the output is so much more useful to human beings. Programs don't really care, right? A program could do kubectl apply of the YAML, could run customized a kubectl apply of the YAML without checking it in. So programs don't really care, but humans care. So I'm hopeful we can gravitate towards a human-centric convention, checking all your YAML files apart from secrets, for example. Anyway, sorry, Jeff.
No, I was going to say, I did have a little thought, but I've just noticed on that, but I noticed Jeff has got his hand up.
Yeah, it's a new topic, though.
Oh, okay. Just very quickly on that last one then. All I'd say is, I just thought, and this may be a crazy idea, but in fact, I'll follow it up on an issue. It's just thinking the config root director, I like it that it's in that repo, but when I was looking, you know how sometimes when we do a tag, it's a bit implementation specific this, then we do a tag of a release. We tag the image change version and we push the tag, right? Because we don't want it in the mainline branch because that could cause another, it's a change to the mainline branch, isn't it? I just wonder sometimes maybe we should do the same thing with the config root directory to avoid the commit going back, whether that should actually just be a tag version of anything that's changed. It's just a food for thought. We don't have to think about it now, but it's the same process, isn't it? It's like we kind of want to keep that fairly clean, the mainline branch clean, rather than regenerate. I wonder if we regenerate in a tag, and that's got the traceability, because then it would work quite nicely with Argo as well, then, because you can track a new tag, it's a new deployment. But yeah.
The only thing, like we often use the tag. For example, we might change a POM XML or a package JSON or a Helm chart, whatever. And one of the nice benefits from just doing that in the tag is it's like a leaf. You don't see package.json changing all the time when you're just looking at what's happened in the main branch. You don't see those changes because those changes aren't really important.
Yeah,
they're not
do a diff
real change. They're like
the tags. Yeah.
Yeah, I just like to. I like in an IDE bit, I look at a file and say, show me all the history of this one file, and I don't have to go trolling through all different tags to look at the file. I could just look at the main branch. Anyway, yeah, let's raise an issue and talk.
Yeah, let's have a issue on that one.
So, Jeff,
Jeff,
The
yes,
floor's
take us
yours.
out away from this.
And then it's good. So Jeff,
Yeah.
Jeff, go for it.
Yeah, so I saw a couple comments on Slack regarding ML ops. And it sounds like, James, you may have a comment that you said that we can start next ML ops work with V3. So is there a roadmap with ML ops? Is there what's the plan for that?
Yeah, so the comments I was really making was more about, because we're basically going through reviewing some of the infrastructure we have supporting V2. And so there are some pretty big images in our Google Container Registry. We've got some quite large download costs as well. So I don't know where they're coming from, but just basically doing a bit of administration stuff, polishing. But there's more to the thing. Terry's here, so maybe Terry can talk about some of the ML ops stuff. But it's more that V3 is now ready. So if there is more work that can start building on top with the ML ops, V3 would be the good base to kind of start building that on top of. Terry, did you want to add in something?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, in terms of roadmap in general, we're working in line with the CDF roadmap for MLOps, where the intention there is to try and get as many projects as possible to start treating MLOps as an extension to DevOps rather than a completely independent and unrelated discipline for trying to do the same sorts of problem solving, but in just a specific machine learning domain. So, last year we put an MLOps capability into Jenkins X so that you could treat your machine learning assets as first-class citizens within your CDC, within your CI/CD environment, and the intention, in the short term, is to make sure that's all refreshed and up to date with the latest versions of all the dependencies, and then look to the MLOps roadmap in terms of what we need to be thinking about next, about specific governance challenges around machine learning assets and traceability and managing large data sets and things like that. But the detail is all available in that MLOps roadmap.
Jeff, is there something specific you were looking for in there?
Well, I'm involved in the Kubeflow project as well, and we're kind of using that at the bank, and just trying to see how we can, what MLOps is a big problem. I mean, it's a huge problem. So I need to get better tooling around it and procedures.
Terry, I know that when we talked a little while back, there was certainly a lot of opportunity around more standardization around tooling practices. Is that would that be included in the kind of the chart or the roadmap that you're looking at the moment within the CDF, that effort, or is it more process and more implementation?
So let me take a couple of minutes to spell out what the basic challenges are, and then it will become more obvious as to what needs to be done. MLOps, as it stands today, is a pretty bespoke affair where everybody's going in their own directions, building their own handcrafted solutions to solving the deployment problem for their assets. But there are two trends, and those trends are things that we're concerned about in the bigger picture of things. So the first trend is that machine learning tends to be very heavily dependent on Jupyter notebooks. And Jupyter notebooks are really, really convenient for sort of sketching out machine learning models and testing things out, but they're really not suited to long-term asset management. They're interpreted documents that are really, really hard to version control and manage and do the whole sort of life cycle management piece on. So that's one worry that introduces a whole bunch of problems in a production space. And then the other issue right now is that because of that, most people have been building solutions that are effectively optimized for putting Jupyter notebooks into production environments. So they tend to be treated a bit like database server installations for machine learning, where you have a dedicated server instance, and then one team deploys models into that server instance, and then another team consumes those models as part of your actual application. So you end up with two completely independent deployment mechanisms that are not linked. So you no longer have a coherent application with a single, continuous delivery process. You end up with, two deployment mechanisms that are unconnected. So the roadmap work that we've been doing and the stuff that's already in Jenkins X is about, turning machine learning assets back into just conventional software assets that can be managed as part of a single deployment process. So, all you do is you include your machine learning work in the rest of your application development, and you get one set of assets which are managed under a single release process.
Cool. So is the effort around more to? It's not really looking at tooling. Is Jenkins X kind of particularly? You're looking to help. Is there anything we can do in the Jenkins X land to help support that? I guess.
Well, I think what we can probably start to look at is how we can improve the observability side of things in a way to favor some of the machine learning problems, and also how we can look at managing some of the scale issues that come when you're trying to work with versioning very large data sets to use for machine learning. Because the challenge that you're facing in terms of, we've got some big images around the MLOps space for Jenkins X. Well, actually, from an MLOps perspective, those are tiny images, because we might be working with petabytes of data that have to be part of the release process. So it would be good to actually get you a bit closer to some of these problems, and then we can look at how we need to think about optimizing things in the future to allow us to deal with really big stuff and problems. Where, for example, if you're trying to build something like GPT-3, you may have a cluster of several hundred workstations, each with a dozen GPU cards in it, all requiring images to execute in order to build this model. So it suddenly becomes a very large, very distributed problem, where you're trying to get huge amounts of data to the right bit of your cluster in order to be able to efficiently execute the model.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, maybe on some practical terms, I think we probably do need to follow up on that initial thing that we were talking about on Slack, because I think at the moment we've got, for example, there's 8 terabytes of data of images that are on there. I'm not sure they're even being used, and so it's kind of, I don't know if maybe we can look at, maybe if we got closer, we can understand maybe there's different ways and different opportunities that we could do. So we've probably got some more, there's a few different approaches. There's some short-term work that I think we need to do to help, that we don't break anybody, or we help anybody that's going to carry on using V2, that we don't break them. And And honestly, that's probably what we want to do that fairly soon, because it's costing money. And if people aren't using them, then we probably want to get them out of the registry, and we need to garbage collect them. And then secondly, maybe a bit further effort of looking if there's different approaches we can do to achieve the same thing. Maybe it's not using images, or maybe not storing lots of different versions of these images in the container registry. And yeah, I think as those opportunities come about, tag us in, or maybe pop something in the community Slack channel or the office hours, and maybe see if we can get some brainstorming around some of these. So I think it'd be a good topic.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom.
At least what we do on ours, we've got a few models running within our system, mainly for document recognition, and we've found that actually storing the models within the pod for us to deploy it, we found that it just increases size so heavily that it's not really feasible for us to do that. And us cleaning down previews for our recognizer pods, it gives us gigabytes and gigabytes worth of space, and that's like the first offender that we go to, and that's even without the models stored within. And then we've basically got a PVC where we have the models stored within that, and have that as read write many, so we can basically scale that, and they'll all just read from the PVC into the pod's memory on as it starts up. So we're not doing the dance of, you know, having massive containers for previews and then builds lasting ages, because at least we run it, we deploy the model, and then we can just pull from, you know, have the model name in a config file. But I'd be interested to see how other people are doing it, because we sort of have winged it.
Tom,
Yeah, so
is that on
the thing
Azure,
with-
by the way? I was just going to say, read write many doesn't often work. Well, it depends on the cloud.
Yeah, it's on Azure. We're using Azure File for our PVC. We had to make a custom PVC thing for it to make read write many, but it does work.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think there's a similar file store thing I noticed on GCP as well, because I think one of the products that CloudBees use do the same. But there's a Terraform chart actually in Jenkins X. But yeah, we found that if the normal out of the box PV and read write many failed if you've got two different pods on different nodes, wasn't it? The data centers can, I think it was, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right.
So, I mean, going back to this piece, where we've already got an issue open, which was around the versioning stuff that we needed to manage in order to make this more efficient. So we should probably go back to that issue and reevaluate that in the light of where we are now with V3, and then make sure we've got everything we need to be able to split that stuff up effectively, but still get the caching benefits that we need for the customers.
Okay, good stuff.
By the way, Gert,
yeah,
his hand up for hours. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I wanted to come back to the beginning of this discussion. If I understand right, that you have done some investigation of different GitOps approaches with Flux CD and Argo CD. May I ask that you write down your experiences or the results of your investigation in a small blog article or something like that?
Absolutely. We're going to be doing a blog. We'll probably do like maybe Argo first, and then in a week or two Flux, because we kind of want to get people discussing how are they similar, how are they different. Is there a way you could use all three that look and feel the same, and have a general conversation across the industry? But yeah, we're going to be documenting it on the website, that if you want to use Argo or Flux as the last mile in, say, production or staging, here's how. So yes, we're going to be documenting all of this. We're still just kicking the tires a little bit right now, trying to find out all the different ways we can use them, because it's kind of interesting.
That sounds great.
You would have thought there's only one way to do it, but it turns out there's lots of ways to do it.
And then also,
sorry, I was just going to say, but even just having like this as early as we are into it, there's already some clear lines that we can draw with Jenkins X can help. And it's some good slick integrations with Argo, with Flux, So actually that blog is exactly, that's our end thing, our documentation blog, and we can talk about, you know, it's not gonna be a pro and con of one versus the other. I think it will be a case of where this can help, where this can help. This is, you know, we'll try and do it in a nice, unbiased way where we can actually, you know, people have some good education approaches.
Yeah, this would be great. Thanks. And also, if you have some idea about good practices or best practices of a common GitOps repository layout, yeah, this would also be a good starting point for others. So if you would write down your ideas, it would be great.
Yeah, I'm just finding a link. We did start off a little doc. To be fair, we've not looked deeply into Argo and Flux in a while. So we're just doing another deep dive to see where's Flux CD2 and where's the latest Argo CD. So we can kind of compare all 4 of the main GitOps tools that seem to be around: Argo CD, Flux CD, Git Operator, and Google Config Sync. We did, I'm just pulling up now, we did a few little docs that are fairly old, but they're hopefully still relevant, of what's the Git layout. I'll post it in the Slack.
Not using Slack very much these days, so you have to...
I'll post it in Slack and I'll post it in the Zoom.
Okay, great.
Can I also suggest that we sort of summarize the core of that thinking and then include that in the CDF best practices documentation?
Yeah.
Well, I think I was going to say something about some of that. I think what we're doing a lot there's a lot of best practice documentation we'll build up on the Jenkins X website. I'm not too sure about it'd be good if the CDF best practice SIG as well kind of also dipped into that and kept an eye on some things, because we're going to continually keep on evolving that as well. So that might be a good source to keep an eye on as well.
And there's the GitOps discussions and interop going on at the CDF. And then there's also the GitOps working group in CNCF, which is like another cross-industry kind of place to have discussions. So there's all these different places where these kind of things are happening. So I'm hoping we can just keep sharing content with each other and helping us all align at some form of.
Yeah, but I wouldn't expect it to be pull based. You're probably going to have to push the content out to those other forums.
Definitely, yeah.
They could just take the Jenkins X website and put it in the
I'm sure that'll work. I'm sure that.
Yeah, I'll just push it now. Right down, pull request now. The JX docs.
Do a force push to the web browser. I'm sure. No one will mind.
So, yeah.
I guess another thing that's interesting though is it's interesting how similar they can be. I mean, literally, we've got all 4 GitOps projects working off the same tree of YAML.
Yeah.
So at least there's one really good thing that there is a way that you can lay out your Git repository that works in all 4 solutions. We haven't quite nailed every single piece of all those 4 solutions, but we've got a working POC where there's one way of using all 4 solutions, so it shows that it's not this thing that's a million miles away from being a thing, that we could try get some a way of doing things similarly. I think the biggest area of divergence is how much magic in Git do you have literally the Kubernetes YAMLs in Git, or do you have these magic files that run magic templatey things, or run customize, or run Helm, and that's what's in Git. I think that seems to be the big ideological debate, or the big divide. I think from the Google perspective, they've always been, you check in the canonical YAML, and it doesn't matter what goes before that, what tools you use. You check in the declarative YAML. That's the kind of the googly way that Git contains the YAML that is close to the Git repository and the Kubernetes cluster. I think a lot of other people in the GitOps space, and to be fair, we were the same in version 2 of Jenkins X. We checked in Helm files and template files and all this other kind of stuff. and we didn't worry so much about checking in the real stuff at the end. With V3, we've become much more keen on the Google approach of try and check in the actual final stuff, because then it just makes it easier to understand how things change over time. But yes, hopefully all of these things will become more clear as we all write more docs everywhere and share content. James, are you just about to do a brief demo?
It was more just to show that this is just something early on. I mean, it really was just like James was saying. It's, you know, there is so much we can chop and change and actually swap out and benefits. And yeah, this was actually a Jenkins X, one of our quick starts. It just worked out the box. You know, you can actually work with the same format, the Helm. It's just the Helm sync. Sorry, Argo CD sync. There's a little promote step that we do. Maybe that'll be used, maybe it won't, but we've got a little sort of promote step that's a Tecton step that just does this app create and then an app sync. There might be a better way to do that, but it was more, there's nothing more that we actually did with Jenkins X. So really what that was, just to highlight, was, you know, this is really just the actual syncing, the last mile of it. But this works really, really well with everything else that we've done with Jenkins X. Seems to be, it's quite remarkable actually. It all just worked. You know, it seems that we've actually nailed the approach that we've been doing. You know, the structures, the Helm templates, the CI/CD processes, the pipelines, all of that just worked right up until the point where you want to maybe use Argo or Flux, and it will just work. So it was really just to highlight that. It's quite exciting.
And while you're doing the Argo demo, I'll briefly say that the Flux version, I basically just pointed Flux at the remote production repository, and it just did the kubectl apply of the same YAML that Jenkins X had already populated on the pull request. So it was all the same. It was the same pipeline, same images, same YAML. It's just the kubectl apply was different. One thing that needs work is probably the biggest area is, what does that mean for external secrets? And ironically, a bug was raised yesterday that was, somebody's realized that when we're doing an install of Jenkins X with V3, we often just boot up do a boot job of a Git repository, and it lazily creates all the external secrets in Vault or Google, Amazon Azure Secret Manager, which is great. Someone's found an issue that if you add a new secret on a pull request pipelines don't have rights to write to Vault or Google, Amazon Azure Secret Managers. And was raising an issue saying, can we fix that and add the role in Terraform? The first pull request I did today was to do that very thing, and then James saw it and went, I don't think we should do that because that's a security risk, because pull requests shouldn't be cluster admins on your secret managers to be able to read, write, and whatever all your secrets, which is probably true. So one of probably the biggest areas to fix to get really, really nice Argo and Flux integration is going to be, how should we do external secrets properly if your last mile is Argo or Flux? When we're using the Git operator, we can defer that and say, when you merge changes to master, any missing secrets will be populated. We can't do that with Argo and Flux because those don't understand external secrets. And certainly they don't understand writing to external secret stores like Jenkins X does in the Git operator. So that's probably the biggest area to really fix that, is how to do external secrets with Argo and Flux.
And interestingly, that was another one of the things. It's you know, and again, I'm really, really totally impressed by Argo CD. Really, really like it. Really great documentation. Everything just works as you go through. But this is a good example, right? Secret management is something that we looked at, and we wanted a good experience within Jenkins X to have that automated approach and deep integration with some external secret stores. And you know, the Argo CD approach currently, it may change, but currently is, there's lots of different ways to use GitOps, secrets with GitOps, and lists them all. As we know, we actually started on our project, we used sealed secrets, and we ran into a lot of UX issues around trying to, you know, GPG certs, and you know, it was quite a bit of a nightmare. And of course, we went with GoDaddy external secrets, which is now going to the Kubernetes top level project. But it's that deep integration, so where you can start to see where we really like these other tools as well. We want to find a good good relationship with them. It's open source. We want everyone to win, but there's some deep integration that we think we could probably help. Certainly around maybe the installation setup, that automated experience that you get from Jenkins X as a developer, as an administrator, and you can start to leverage small parts from different open source projects. That the external secrets is a great one because it was a big focus of V3. It was not an easy thing to fix or to address, but we wanted to address these big challenges.
We also probably need to think about how we document things like tidying up secrets. I've just discovered that I was running up a fairly sizable bill just because there were 300 odd secrets lying around in the cloud that were, previous test environments that don't go away when you delete them.
Yeah, we've
Definitely.
gone actually.
We've had similar challenges ourselves. One of the blogs I'm hoping to do fairly soon, next couple of weeks, is how we do BDD testing. We've been through a long journey over the last kind of 3 years, well, more than that, but certainly the last 3 years of how do you test things a lot? Because you often have to create new clusters to do real tests, because you want to create new cloud infrastructure to test things for real rather than just tweaking a cluster and doing something. We've been using the Terraform operator, which is really, really awesome. It's taken a little while to figure out how to use it properly. But even then, sometimes it doesn't garbage collect everything. And there are some challenges. Even if you are using Terraform, which is meant to fix all this stuff for you, it doesn't always fix everything. Because it does depend. Well, yeah, I'll save it for the blog rather than going through the gory detail now. But there are lessons of how to deal with things like Terraform and Terraform operator, and you do probably want to have a garbage collection as well. Even if you've got Terraform, we've started to write additional garbage collectors in case Terraform doesn't garbage collect it. And it turns out there's all these cases where, so for example, sometimes secrets don't get garbage collected. And you'll do a Terraform install and then destroy everything. And everything was made through Terraform, but sometimes it doesn't delete the secrets. On Amazon, it doesn't delete the load balancers, which is a complete nightmare and a pain in the ass. So you often need this extra garbage collector to kick in, which is annoying, but yes, I hope to document all of that soon.
Yeah,
it's quite a challenge, isn't it?
I mean, honestly, that the recent discussion around it cleaning up GCR came down to cost because of things not being garbage collected, right? It's certainly things get lost, and I know. I mean, honestly, I've got PTSD. I think once for using Amazon and having a cloud bill come through, and I had no idea where my resources were, but I'd been charged, I think, I don't know, almost $2,000 for the month, and had no idea where things were. And it's, I closed down my account, and it's just luckily they defended it. They were brilliant, to be fair. But using the cloud, and especially if you're doing automated testing, continual testing, those things can rack up definitely and be quite costly if you don't get it right. So, and also it's not just the one cloud as well. We do automated testing on lots of different clouds as well, and trying to handle the different intricacies of each one as well. When you can't rely on Terraform, which is supposed to be the agnostic thing, it's kind of challenging. But yeah, keeping an eye on cloud bills is definitely something that it would be nice to have a bit of better insight into.
Yeah, and again, we've talked about this before, but if we're going to make Jenkins X more universally accessible, then we do need to make sure there's always a very low cost entry point so people can dabble with it on home projects without needing to fund, hundreds of dollars a month on cloud infrastructure.
For what it's worth, I think that's come down quite a lot significantly. I think we could even remove Nexus out of the default thing, but it's the default running costs now are pretty small compared to what we've come.
Yeah, I am hoping just to help developers, because a lot of developers just want to kick the tires and try things out, and they don't necessarily want to put their credit card into a cloud provider. I am hoping to have a completely GitHub action-based way of just kicking the tires and make a few quick starts, create a few container images, and be able to deploy them somewhere as a kind of a quick getting started experience that you could just spin up a bunch of repositories, use GitHub Actions rather than Tecton to do the CI/CD, and then you choose to spin up a cluster and then tear it down again. And there's a bunch of websites now that let you spin up a cluster for like 3 hours, and it's completely free, so that you could just use GitHub Actions for all of your CI/CD just to spin up some container images and stuff. I mean, it's not the same, but it's similar. And then just put a cluster on, Minikube or Docker or one of these.
The Catacombs?
Yeah, I found another one. I've got a URL somewhere that anyone can have a cluster for 3 hours and then it goes away again. It's only a little cluster with like one node or something, but you don't need to put in a credit card. And I'm surprised it's not bombarding with Bitcoin miners, to be honest, but I don't know how long it's going to stick around. But yeah, there is a website that you get your own cluster for 3 hours. It's got to be a fairly small cluster, but yeah. But definitely, we want to make it easier for people to start without having much dedicated resources. We definitely want to allow you to use, completely GitHub Actions if you want, as a, zero footprint way and free way. Longer term as well, it would be really nice to be completely serverless. So, for example, if you're on Amazon, use Lambda for Lighthouse or Google Cloud Functions for Lighthouse or whatever. The only thing that's a little bit challenging is we've traditionally assumed a Kubernetes API server. And so some of the controllers we have doesn't quite work yet in a pure serverless world. So being completely serverless is something that I would love us to get to where, for example, you could just use Cloud Build for all of your builds and have nothing running unless, or you're using maybe autopilot on GCP or something like that. So you not build anything until you run a pod. And then we try and make it so that pods only run, for like an hour a month or something. So that it's completely free for most people. But yes, it's going to take a little while to get there completely. But I'm hoping for a simple GitHub action based way of kicking the tires for absolutely free fairly soon.
It's also the experience though, isn't it? Because we know we kind of go back and forth because we used to have, years ago, Terry, you probably remember the old days of Fabricate with Minikube and Minishift and things just didn't work, or they became out of date very, very quickly, or different capabilities. It's quite hard to then kind of support that, help people get started, but then they're going to have restricted capabilities and making sure that they know that as well, and it's continually tested, and it's just these things. But I think where we are now is a good place because V3 is stable, solid, and we've taken our time to make sure we get this right. Sure, there's going to be improvements that we continually make. Even we're going to keep on evolving it and things, but we've got a good grounding with those different cloud providers and support a matrix as well on the website. And hopefully we can find some of these, maybe even work with some other project communities to help, whether that's Catacombs or like the one you said, James, to maybe work with them as a bit more dedicated time now that we have a bit more time ourselves to get something.
Yeah, I think maybe something that might help is sort of reducing the surprise level by perhaps having a page on the website that discusses, some of the cost aspects and what configuration you can do, what performance you might expect, just some sort of basic tuning parameters, and give people a feel for, how they could run this at a particular price point.
I wonder how much of that. Yeah, I wonder how much of that we could automate. Like, for example, we run a BDD test on Google with the default Terraform. Could we easily say the BDD test cluster we ran would cost you this much a month? Like do an automated.
You could.
That might help with your resource garbage collection as well. If what you could do is basically create a fresh account every BDD test, run your whole boot and maybe a CI, then shut it all down, get the cost for it, and then delete the account.
It's slightly a bit more awkward with accounts. with GCP only because of security and permissions. It's a little bit more awkward, and also accounts when you have a termination period of 30 days. So when you create something, it takes 30 days for it to turn on. I think we should be able to still do. I wonder if we could actually chart. I'm sure we can chart number of tests in an account, and then correlate the costs as well. But also as well our own infrastructure. What would be amazing is if once we get, let's say, the cost and the number of builds and the number of repos our own infrastructure is doing. Maybe when we scale up, maybe we correlate to features and all that goodness. All of this is certainly quite a hot topic that we're quite interested in at the moment, and to help.
Yeah, I wonder if we could persuade Cloudbees to let us share the production.
That's exactly
costs.
Exactly. Well, yeah.
They should be. Well, we'll see. We'll talk to them, see what.
But there might be some other ways we could. There's some not to. Yeah, we've got.
Be careful making promises about Cloudbees.
Well, we're obviously one that we run as an open source project, but then equally there is things where we might be able to get some help from. If, for example, there's like Solar Q, is it? They do a free tier of certain things to help us and various things, and maybe we can work with Cloudbees to see, because they're certainly interested in this kind of thing as well. Maybe we can get some help from some agreement that we can get something from there.
We're running Sonar Q within our cluster. That's quite a cool thing that you might eventually do alongside Grafana.
Yeah.
Right, I've got to drop off, but thanks, guys.
I can't believe that's an hour gone already. That's brilliant.
Oh, crikey.
Yeah.
It flew by again.
Fantastic. Thanks, everybody.
Well, have a good couple of weeks, everybody. Vincent's got an awesome demo for next in 2 weeks' time.
Just to stitch him up. Should we just say that? Just standard at the end of every
just say
every one. And next time, Vincent's got a demo.
Not until he turns up.
Brilliant. Thanks, everybody. Speak to you in 2 weeks. See you all online.
Thanks, bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.